welcome back to Countdown to Destruction. This is episode 2. This is our podcast dedicated to The Leftovers. I am watching for the very first time. My name is Matt Waters. Ben Phillips is watching for very much not the first time. Ben, how are you this evening?
I am good.
You hot as hell?
Hot as hell,
but
I didn't get complicated by trains today, so that's all good.
Nice. Yeah, Britain isn't built for heat, turns out. Everyone's just dying of a heat wave.
Trains are setting on fire, like literally trains are setting on fire.
Yeah, it's not good. It's bad times. We're not really good with extreme weather of any kind. Speaking of extreme weather, not really, but The Leftovers. Episodes 3 and 4. It is time to discuss them. But before we do that, one, go to intotherealworld.com and check out all our content and listen to From Broadcast Depth, which is a podcast all about Lost, 2 Damon Lindelof shows. If you like one, you'll probably like the other. But secondly, you listen to the director's commentary for the pilot since we recorded our first episode.
I didn't realise there was a director's commentary, and then I went to watch episode 3. I think what happened was I clicked on play all episodes the first time I did it, and the second time I actually went like, no, I'm going to click on episode 3, and it was like director's commentary. I was like, oh god, damn
now
it,
I have to watch.
Now I have. So I ended up watching 3 episodes in a row rather than 2 episodes, like was my original intent.
So yeah, I just thought I'd give you this short slot of time to share any musings you discovered from that commentary without anything spoilery. I gather it does just spoil the entire season, so I definitely shouldn't listen to it until I've seen it.
Yeah, they do go. It is the assumption that you've watched the entire show,
which is
and
fair.
they do say things like, "Oh, if you want to find out X, listen to the end of this commentary," and then they say, "And if you want to find out more about X, listen to the end of the episode 10 commentary." So once we get to episode 10, we'll be able to say more stuff.
Okay, but is there anything non-spoilery that you can share with us? Any juicy anecdotes or tidbits?
My favourite one is that in the scene where Kevin shows off his excellent back tattoo.
It's awful back tattoo. Taking on what was his name? Is his name Wentworth Miller? That's it, Wentworth Miller. Yeah, challenging Wentworth Miller for the worst TV tattoo.
No, the worst TV tattoo is Jack's tattoos on Lost, and they're not actually TV tattoos. They're his actual tattoos that they wrote into the show.
That makes sense, though. A dude like that would have those kind of tats. Anyway. Yeah, sorry, in that
So
scene.
instead of him walking along getting changed, it was going to be him furiously masturbating whilst the Senate hearing was on about the scientific paper about the departure, which I think would have summed up the entire ethos of the show.
Just to really underpin, no one gives a shit what happened in the departure. This is a show about some fucked up human being.
There are a couple other tidbits, like I didn't realise that Peter Berg was the corpse in the second episode, which makes so much sense, because that's the one that Patterson Joseph starts making out with, and it's like, oh, he wouldn't let me do this while he was alive, and it's like, oh, it was someone that we met,
it's in his directorial demands. Like, he has to have his face licked by one of his actors, or he won't direct your pilot for you.
Yeah, so. Speaking of directorial demands, he was also Peter Berg was very keen on making sure that the party scenes with Jill and the other teenagers were, like, respectful and not kind of like,
look at all these depraved teens.
Yeah, which did lead to the very funny exchange saying, like, who would want to be watching Empire where you can watch a depressed teen cry whilst jerking off another boy?
Well, there you go. I look forward to some more stuff when spoilers aren't a factor. But the pilot is in the past. The face-licking episode is in the past. It is now time for 2 Boats and a Helicopter, which aired July 13th, 2014, directed by Keith Gordon, who, as Ben and I were discussing before this recording started, very good TV TV director. Some good stuff under his belt. Written, as always, by Damon Lindelof, and this time joined by Jacqueline Hoyt. So here we go. This is an episode entirely about Matt. That's just my life. I view my life as an entire episode about me. We open with Matt, played by Chris Eccleston. He's giving a sermon in a largely empty church, which is interrupted by a man who just walks right up to the altar and assaults him, and then stuffs one of Matt's flyers in his mouth. So while I'm behind his message in theory about, like, look guys, it's not the rapture, look, some very bad people got taken, this shows there is an undisputedly ugly side to it as, these dead people whose names he's kind of besmirching are very justified to assault him in public while no one steps up to defend him.
Yeah, so he's taking people who might be fundamentally good people, but he's finding like one bad thing about them and then making it seem like they are not good people because they have this one bad thing about them.
Hey man, Jesus rolled around with Mary Magdalene, so let's not judge people here.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably find out that if someone were to write something about Matt, they probably could write something about Matt.
Oh, you could write some things about Matt based on this one episode. And I'm sure this is just the highlights. It's very telling, that we spoke about how in the pilot none of the teens are giving a shit about the Pledge of Allegiance. That a lot of them do pray, but you do get a sense that, where's your God now kind of thing in this largely empty church, and no one steps in to help this priest, which I feel they would do.
Structured religion seems to have gone away. It's kind of more there's a theistic feeling to everything, but not necessarily like organised. Like, people don't want to go to a church. There's the baptism scene fairly early on in the episode where the guy wants to have his child baptised just in case, but isn't interested on coming in Sundays. It's one of those things where like we want the protections of God, but not necessarily the cultural trappings of it.
Well, you would think like something like this would probably reaffirm a lot of people's belief, but in a scenario where that was the rapture, it would probably feel a bit pointless to actually observe religious behaviours, but you would probably believe it more. I don't know, but it was certainly interesting to sort of see the state of things there. His sermon he gives about a little boy who wished for some more attention ended up with leukemia. That's, of course, about Matt himself.
What?
I know. We will learn in this episode that the sister who he wanted the attention back from is Nora, explaining that pre-existing relationship you mentioned in the previous episode. So there you go. And that story will sort of come back around later in the episode. When he's in the hospital, Kevin comes to visit him, invites him over for steaks. And in this little conversation, we get the reveal that Kevin is not living in his own house, but he's living in his father's house. I didn't know that before this. Matt declines. He says how nights are difficult. That's foreshadowing. So the ties between Matt and Kevin's father are implied further, where, he previously said, he gets a pass or something like that, and so do you. I don't know, something to that effect. But we have this idea that, like, they were friends. Yeah,
it's obvious that, like, Kevin's dad supported Matt in what he was doing in terms of, like, the outing of
corrupt people
who'd been departed and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously we get more in depth into just exactly what happened there, but
I also respect their commitment to not making Kevin the focus constantly. Like, this is his one scene to remind you he's in the show, but and like almost every major character does. Well, no, that's not true, but a lot of the adults do make an appearance, but this is entirely Matt's story, and Kevin just sort of floats by to give a little bit of context to some stuff.
I love how they just kind of do this after 3 episodes. Like, they kind of settle you in a little bit, and then immediately they go, like, right, we are going to get Christopher Eccleston to earn his paycheck, and it is an hour in which he's in every scene, isn't he? Like,
Who got the first flashback in Lost? I assume Jack.
In the pilot, the first flashback is Jack. The first episode is Kate.
Yeah, but you would assume it would be something like that, where we'd learn about Kevin, but instead we go to this character that after 2 episodes you'd be forgiven for thinking doesn't matter at all. And it's just like, okay, this isn't a normal show. The clown that he gets in an elevator with is the same one as from the pilot, who was just sitting on the street. I don't know if that's significant in any way, but I noted it was the same clown. I like the sort of kick him when he's down of... At the beginning, they're praying for this little girl who's in hospital, and while he's in hospital, he tries to visit her. Turns out she woke up out of her coma, and he's like, oh, good, we prayed for her. He's like, nah, she woke up last night. And it's just like, yeah, fuck you, dude. Like, the tragic life of Matt. I kind of dig them sort of piling on like that.
It's so good, because they'll do, like, these little things where you think he's done some good in the world, and then they immediately say, like, no, that was pointless.
Yeah,
like,
it was pointless, and fuck this dude. It's basically the message of this whole episode. So as you said, a man brings his baby to be baptised behind his wife's back while she's getting her nails done or something like that. Matt obliges, obviously, and he sort of, as you said, he pressures him to try to attend a Sunday service, but instead the guy gives him some information about one of the departed who gambled away his son's college money, and Matt follows up on this and goes to the casino where it happened. to corroborate the story. So I do like the fact he does fact check these. He doesn't just take some hearsay and run a like one of his newsletters on it. Like he takes the trouble. Like, this is a drive away. I can't remember where exactly. I think it's in Connecticut, and they live in upstate New York or something. So that's a drive, and he goes all the way out there. And yeah, he has that very ballsy move to liken a very horrible person that got departed to the niece of like the pit boss or whatever. You know, and he says, "I can see why you got punched." And it's like, yeah, you're towing a very delicate line here, but it's quite a powerful
like you don't want this evil person to be compared to your nice innocent niece. Exactly. And it's like, wow, you're
kind of doing that.
Yeah, you're making these intense moralistic judgments about people who are gone and you don't have closure on. Which is this, like, you can tell, like, as you've said, like, why people hate him and why you would feel so vitriolic. It's very similar to what the Guilty Remnant do.
Kind of,
but in kind of like a reverse way, which is like...
I don't want to murder him on sight, though, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, more on that coming. So Matt is informed by the bank that an offer's been put in on the church that he runs, and he has 24 hours to match it. He goes to Nora, his sister, and she turns him down. This debunks my theory that she was like gathering the info that he uses to make his newsletter before I knew they were related. That was my guess. She makes mention of the judge and like how it should have stopped there. And we will see that this judge, it's like a very big one for him. And like, I guess his first newsletter he ran, or his first, you know, they're not really newsletters, they're like flyers. This conversation, like, she fucking nails it as an actress, Carrie Coon, obviously. It's a very well acted little exchange between these two. We kind of, you see everything that this character is in this one conversation. Like, he goes straight for the jugular, asking for the benefit money from her departed family, immediately apologizes for it, and then she calls him rightly on it, like, don't upset me, then tell me not to be upset, like that kind of thing. Like, he's that kind of guy. Like, he's not outwardly like a sinner or a person that commits these horrible crimes or anything like that, but he's sort of, you get the sense this is like an emotionally manipulative guy who's just seems like a straight white dude, and I don't want to phrase it like that, but yeah, he's that kind of a slightly insidious person.
Oh yeah, it's like gaslighting is what he's doing.
Exactly, yeah.
He's been like, oh no, you're overreacting to this thing that I said to get you to emotionally react to this. And yeah, I mean, it's not the healthiest relationship that these two have.
No, and she greets him really warmly. Like, I don't know how to like phrase this, but like when she answers the door, she like looks up at him with this sort of just very innocent face. Like, it's just very like inviting. This is all sounding very creepy, but I don't know. There's just a warmth to her performance, and then for him to like get into this realm where, you know, he's prodding at her for the money, and then he's name dropping like how her family were departed and everything, and this gets into a whole conversation about his whole like crusade, and she asks him, what do you believe in, Matt? And sort of, you know, really getting at him, and just go Nora is basically
yeah. I mean, this is probably the first big scene that Carrie Coon's got to have on the show.
Yeah.
Like we got a little bit of it with the interview in the last episode where she's getting to do some stuff, but this is...
But like playing like a back and forth, like heated emotional conversation, yeah, she crushes that. And then you truly see what an asshole he is when, as a last-ditch effort to get this money out of her, he drops this bombshell that her husband was cheating on her with, I think, one of their kids' teachers or something like that. Very David Beckham, maybe, allegedly, who knows. Like, what a scumbag move. Like, she's already said no, and to just throw this, like, final, like, Hail Mary, haymaker or whatever to try and get the money out of her, it's like, what a dick. Like, he says how this is the one story he won't run, and he never will. And that makes him a hypocrite. You either believe in and we're going to get to this next episode as well, but you either believe in what you're saying or you do not. And I don't think you get to have it both ways, quite frankly. Like, either be the most pious man in the world or don't be a fucking preacher, you know? Like,
but I think that's what's so interesting about Matt as a character, is that he does fundamentally believe in this stuff, but he's not being a good Christian.
No. He's not.
And I love that, like this idea that like he's on this intensely moralistic crusade, and as we'll see, he does have his reasons. Whether or not they're valid is entirely up to your own interpretation.
Yeah.
But you get why he does the things that he does, even if you don't sympathise with him.
Yes.
And that's what makes this so good, is because this episode just starts to ramp up that like kind of want him to succeed, because what's the alternative here?
Yeah. I mean, he keeps getting shit on, and it's like, in any situation like that, it's like, well, he hasn't done anything completely awful, so I guess I'm rooting for him. Like, there's a lot of characters on this show who I would say are bad people. He's probably one of the few where you, like, kind of are, like, wanting him to succeed in the face of that.
I mean, because,
he's sort of, like, the best executed, sort of maybe good person who makes bad decisions or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and again, you've got that idea that everything he's saying is true.
Yeah.
Even if he's doing it in the worst way possible.
Like, he's playing a hand. Like, he's tactically choosing what things to say at what time, and it is very dicky.
Yeah. like he could go talk to these people and, like, try and figure something out about, like, what exactly was the system behind this stuff. Instead, he's just like, I have reason to believe that this was not God, and therefore I need to prove that it wasn't God that did this.
Yeah. And you get that sense that, you know, they talk about it being, like, his crusade. Like, he desperately needs to be like, no, this wasn't the rapture, and I guess restore people's faith in the process. You know, if this wasn't the rapture, I ask you, what good is your God in this world where people just vanish? Yeah, so he heads home depressed. We find out that Matt's wife is catatonic. He is behind on paying her carer. In this, like, beautifully sad scene where he's, you know, bathing her and puts her to bed, and then he gets on his little cot next to her bed, and he, like, is crying, and he's, like, trying to cover his mouth to stop himself, because I guess, you know, she obviously can't move, but you get the sense she can understand, like, hear and think, and I guess he just doesn't want to give the impression that he's upset, because, you know, she's got her problems, so who is he to be upset?
And he's been doing this for 3 years as well, which is, like, that is crushing, is that for every single day, this person who you loved, and you have to care for them in this way. And big props to the show, because they don't skimp on the casting of this character.
Yeah, they are not afraid to cast big actresses and have them say fuck all.
Yeah, so in our third actress on the show, who is basically relegated to a silent role, we have Janelle Maloney from The West Wing. She received an Emmy for that show. Oh, no, nomination. She received nominations for that show, but Jesus Christ.
Still, in the midst of his tears, I think he says, help me. He receives divine inspiration, obviously, he's a preacher. Heads out in the middle of the night to Kevin's house. Or Kevin's father's house.
I mean, they're both called Kevin. Kevin's house.
Accurately, yes, they are both called Kevin. He finds Laurie in the back garden, just standing there, doing her GR thing. I
don't think she's not doing her GR thing.
Well, exactly. She's doing very much the opposite of the GR thing, as we'll get to. They each promise the other they won't tell Kevin, which is funny to me. Matt digs up $20,000 left to him by Kevin Sr. in a jiffy jar. And you also see, like, the flyer about this corrupt judge, and on the back, Kevin's written, "You deserve this, Rev," or whatever.
So do you get who the corrupt judge is? I mean, like...
I don't.
He's the person who's driving the car.
Was I supposed to know that?
Well, it's supposed to be this, like, it's not explicitly stated in the episode, but it is, like, the idea that the judge who...
It makes sense the first person he would try and find out about is the person that caused his wife to be in this condition, yeah.
Yes, so that, I mean, that it's not implicit.
Right.
No, it's not explicit. It's not explicit.
It is implicit. It is implicit. Yeah. So there's a lot here, but, you know, Laurie hanging out is pretty telling. She clearly cannot quite let go of this. This will get more complicated. Maybe we should just put a pin in that. But
we'll put a pin in that. Yeah, she's outside this house because she obviously is having some kind of crisis of faith about being in the GR.
I think suddenly remembering you have access to $20,000 in the middle of the night, especially when you're behind on payments on this church in the first place, is a little strange. But I guess I understand it. He doesn't want to use this dirty money, and we'll see he ends up putting it back when he gets more money using it. So I guess he feels... Yeah, like, he doesn't want to use this blood money, essentially. Yeah, it was just a little bit like, oh yeah, $20,000 I can go get. It just seemed a bit strange, but anyway. So he heads back to the same casino from earlier, and he plays roulette. doubles his money 3 times, wins 160 grand, out he walks. How easy is gambling?
How tense were you during that scene? I remember watching this episode 4 years ago when it first aired, and just being like, God, this show has already subverted my expectations of him not getting the win with like the scene where he gets beaten up in the church.
Well, I assumed he would win twice and then lose the big one, especially because that man and his girlfriend like puts 1 chip against him. Like, oh, that's bad luck. It's like, oh, here we go. But no, he wins, and we get the silence, and he's got closed eyes. It's all very well filmed.
I love the little bit about like he sees the pigeons on the table earlier in the episode, and he has to use that table because that is the divine sign from God, because he's seen the pigeons around.
Right.
And
I was going to ask if these pigeons mean anything. Like they're on the stop sign and stuff, and
yeah, they're all things that like it starts with him like shooing the pigeon from the church, and basically he just associates the pigeons with the signage of God, essentially, which is why he gets
jobs were too expensive.
Which is why he gets so defensive when the pit boss is just like, "That's a lot of money, sir. You sure you don't want to use a high roller table?" But no, I want this
table, exactly.
This table that people normally chuck about $10 down on.
So this guy that watched him win it, of course, attempts to rob him. Like Matt, being the naive Christian that he is going to help him with this obviously made-up sob story about we need gas money and you can obviously afford it. And I thought, that's how that's going to go. He's going to get robbed and he's got nothing, and he came so close. But no, he beats the shit out of this man and takes his money back. I'm kind of glad he got to keep it, because I'm sort of sick of seeing these stories on TV where, I mean, it does end up being one of these where it's like, well, not really. I mean, he ends up losing, I guess, in the long term, but you see these stories where somebody is just helpless against a random act of cruelty like this, like a mugging or someone just taking advantage of them, and like, I get it, it's true to life, this shit happens all the time, but I'm really kind of sick of seeing it in these drama shows.
Yeah, like you'd get things where like he loses the church and the money.
Yeah. So he puts the 20 grand back in Kevin's yard, which gives him enough to buy the church back, and I guess the leftover would go to his wife's carer. On the way over, feeling real good about himself, he witnesses a member of the GR get hit with a rock by a random passerby. Because he's a good Christian boy, he pulls over and he helps, and then he himself is knocked out with a rock or a brick or whatever. I think it's a rock. In the midst of all this, he takes down... so that street, it's been renamed after the judge, and he takes down the sign, he puts it in his boot, and you see there's another sign. So I guess this is just what he does whenever he notices one of these signs has been put up.
Yeah, they keep
down.
on replacing that particular street sign, and every time he sees it, he puts it in the boot of his trunk of his car.
That's fair. Because
he just hates this man so much.
Yes. And we did see earlier in the episode, he donated some clothes to the GR, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry they're not white, but hey. And they're seemingly doing their whole stalking Meg thing on him. And he's just like, you're wasting your time, I'm not gonna. So they seem to want him. I guess they judge him as a broken person. But he is nice to them in the face of this, and it, of course, gets him punished. I was convinced the GR themselves were going to end up robbing him, or, like, taking the car and the money or whatever. So I kind of guessed where this ends up, but I just got there a bit early.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think, like, obviously you're supposed to think that the GR are looking at him for some reason, but it suddenly becomes obvious the GR don't care about Matt.
Yeah.
They care about the church.
Indeed. So while he's comatose, we see these flashbacks of Matt's life. We see him walking into the church. One of the members of the GR is at the door greeting him. Don't know if that's an actual legitimate flashback or some sort of symbolic dream. Works either way. We see him being diagnosed with leukemia. We see him and Nora's house burning down with their parents inside. We see the car crash from Departure Day. The one in the pilot, where that mother who lost her baby behind her, there was that car crash. Guess who was in the car? Matt and his wife, leaving her in a vegetative state. Then after that, we see them having sex. And it's like, that's a weird way to do that, because that clearly didn't happen afterwards. But I don't know if I would have... I wonder to myself if I would have noticed that it was the same crash if you hadn't told me that it was important. So
well,
that will forever be my thing to think of.
They do cut to the woman
They do
afterwards.
cut to the woman, but I don't know if I would have immediately been like, yeah. I'm sure I would have. I'm very smart. So the woman, when he's having sex with his wife in this dream, and she asks, why do you persist? She transforms. Is that Laurie that she turns into?
Yes.
Right, I thought so, but she looked a bit weird. I guess it was like the CG made it strange, but yes, so... something there, maybe, and then he catches fire, and then he wakes up. The fire, I guess, representing the sin of thinking of another woman, I don't know, but very telling that he would have that fantasy about Laurie. He wakes up, discharges himself, hurries over to the bank just in time.
He gets out so quickly.
He does.
There's no way a hospital be like, this man with a head wound is allowed to leave.
You can go, sir. He gets there just in time, but actually no, because 2 days have passed and he missed his chance to bid on the church. He heads on over, he's lost, and look who's there, the GR, painting his church white, chucking out all the Bibles and everything. They have a church now. They bring down an English flag, which I assume is a nice little nod to Christopher Eccleston, but what is the plot justification of an English flag hanging over an American church?
I was going to look it up and see whether or not Matt or Nora were like half English or something. But
I don't know. Anyway, so that's the end of your episode. I've got a couple of miscellaneous things here, but just generally, this was my favourite episode of the show so far. I wasn't loving it after 2 episodes. There was some stuff I was intrigued about, but this was just a very well executed hour of television. I'm not sure I would want to just have the entire show be just one character for the whole thing, but it certainly worked to make me care about him, and then he promptly disappears again in the next episode. So they use the song Love Will Keep Us Together when he wins it big, and that's such a good, everything's going to be okay, so...
Oh yeah, spoilers, I'm campaigning for you to use this over the opening or closing of this episode.
Of course I'm going to open it with that. And then they close the episode with Taking the Church by Hosier. Good song. A little bit on the nose, but hey. Are they British? I don't know.
Hosier? I don't know.
I feel like maybe that wasn't a known big song in America, but...
2014, so it would have been just around that time.
Yeah. Good song, though.
Good song.
Yeah, in general, very, very good episode.
Yeah, this was the episode that kind of made me realise what the show could do. Because I'd read the book before this, and this was not in the book at all. This was something completely off-piste.
I feel like that's how this always ends up going. Where, when they're faithful to the thing, it doesn't quite click, and then when they just make up their own shit, or take one tiny thing and spin it off into something huge, it always works really well.
Yeah, and this is the episode that made me realise the show was good. It made a lot of TV critics kind of turn their heads and go oh, this show is doing something more than just being kind of depressing, torturous and arduous kind of thing. Well,
it's still depressing and torturous, but
there's more of a focus. It's not splitting itself 4 different ways. It just gets to tell this one really interesting story. And it's the one thing here that has pissed me off so much about television in the last 5 years since Netflix kind of came about, is that this is an episode. Yeah. You could give this to someone and they could get a lot out of it without knowing the concept of the show or anything like that. It is a self-contained story that is told within 50 minutes.
It's a bottle episode. Well, it's not, because it's got lots of locations, but
No, yeah, but it's focused, and it's not like I couldn't turn to you and show you episode 3 of Ozark.
You couldn't show me any episodes of Ozark. That's got to live on my Netflix queue forever and never get watched.
But I think it's something that that people should learn more of, and I'm happy to say that is something that the show continues to go back to, is the idea of episodes as episodes.
Yeah.
Not so much with the next episode we'll be discussing though.
No. You got anything else on this one before we move on?
Yeah, it's good. If you've made it this far, there is another episode like this that we'll be discussing next time. But for now, we do have to go back to kind of traditional format leftover episodes. Sadly,
because from glowing praise, we're going to go to BJ and the AC. I assume that's Baby Jesus and the Antichrist. I don't know.
I think that is what.
That was my guess.
What the implication is.
But anyway, aired July 20th, 2014, directed by Leslie Linker Glatter,
yes,
and Carl Franklin, written by Damon Lindelof, of course, and Elizabeth Peterson.
Both very good TV directors, but also very weird to have 2 directing one episode.
It is, isn't it? It's almost as if they filmed separate things. I'm going to try and separate these into just contained threads and then weave it back together, but bear with me. So Tom and Christine, lovable idiots, are in some kind of medical facility, I think. A half-naked man begins rambling in 2 languages.
Which half, though, Matt?
He is Winnie the Pooh in it. Full cock and balls. On TV, HBO, everyone.
I love that, this show is just we're on HBO. I don't think we've had boobs yet.
No. Sure haven't. I'm okay with that. I've seen enough boobs on TV.
I know. It's like the opposite of Game of Thrones.
It is the opposite of Game of Thrones. This man begins rambling in 2 languages and then attacks Christine, and Tom does a kind of shitty job of fighting him off, and I kind of like that. It's quite a realistic fight in that neither of them are very good at fighting each other. And
they just kind of like stumble around, bashing into things.
Yeah, just rolling half naked on top of each other.
Somehow Tom manages to cut himself.
Yeah, inexplicably. So from this we learn Christine is pregnant with Wayne's baby. Holy Wayne, sorry. Let's give him his full title. Tom briefly considers abandoning her and returning home alone, but he changes his mind. So, when this man is speaking English, I don't know if it's me wanting to hear it, but it kind of sounds like he's doing a bad impression of Wayne. I don't know.
Yeah,
but...
it's like he's English, and that's what kind of threw me. Like, he sounds English, and I don't know if that's him channeling something, or it's just the actor is, like, English who knows Spanish.
I doubt it, though. He states he knows what's inside her, that, gives away that she is pregnant with Wayne's baby. It's like, Tom... Oh, Tom. Why is he loyal to this crazy man? And, like, I get that he's got a crush on Christine, but she is pregnant with, like, a paedophile cult leader's baby, and she's also a bit of an idiot who keeps just striking up conversations with strangers that get them in trouble. And I'm just like, Tom, you're a dipshit. I'm sorry.
He's not exactly like when he takes her to the hospital. Like,
he doesn't do himself any fucking favour.
He does everything to make it seem like he's abused this woman.
Yeah, the world's worst job of saying, oh, hey, by the way, I didn't do none of this.
Like, I'm just going to stand here, like, rubbing my knuckles and being shifty and, like,
I've
not
got to say,
her...
though, his knuckle wounds are in no way consistent with her belly wounds. Like, he wouldn't have cut his knuckles on her belly. That doesn't happen, but whatever. She's a doctor,
I just love that he, like, interrupts every chance that Christine has to answer questions, and the nurse is just like...
Okay, dude.
Like, obviously, yeah. Christine's an idiot and probably wouldn't actually be able to answer them properly.
She is. Tom making good choices throughout. He has his little crisis of confidence. He's got this little magic child's phone that Wayne gave him that he will ring him on. He considers going back to New York without Christine. That's cold. But he stays. From this we learn the GR in Texas. I asked last time, I didn't know how far-reaching this organisation is, if it was just a this one town thing, but no. They at least have a chapter in Texas, so bigger than I thought. Tom uses the target head people. What are they called again?
The barefoot people.
The barefoot people. No better than the target head people that I'd written down. He uses their little thing to divert attention away because people are just accepting of these crazies. So yeah, they head off together with targets on their heads.
Oh, we missed my favourite part, which is the little skid that he does when he escapes the hospital.
He does do a little skid.
Which is glorious. And then also the phone call he gets.
Yeah, he gets a phone call from this like automated service. Is this the service where they're saying we can make you a replica body or whatever?
Yes.
Right, okay. I didn't know if it was that or the... In the previous one, when Matt's buying bleach, there's a commercial about something like this, and I was thinking, fucking of course, big corporations are making money off the departure. But yes, he gets this ad for... Basically, a company will make a fake corpse for someone who's been departed so you can have a funeral, which is very fucked up. But yeah, and they're on a bus, which suddenly stops, and they get out, and there are just bodies all over the highway, and I put together many hours after seeing it that these are obviously the bodies from this like commercial, because they say someone paid good money for these and they're all like wrapped in white plastic, and why would there be such a high concentration in one place? They are, of course, a shipment of these bodies, I guess. What caused this container truck whatever to crash, I don't know, but it's certainly very strange seeing all these like fake corpses all over the road.
That's one of those images that, like, even if I don't have particularly like fond memories of a lot of this episode, like I do think of that image when it comes to the show.
It was certainly striking. So let's get away from dipshit Tom and stupid Christine. So somebody steals the baby Jesus from the town nativity.
I legitimately love this plotline because when you sit down to watch this episode, I think for a solid 15 minutes, every single character turns to Kevin and is just like, "You're going to find the baby Jesus." What are you going to do about the baby? And Kevin's just like, "Fuck off! Stop telling me about the baby."
I like that Kevin's response to most problems this town have is like, "Fuck off, leave me alone."
I'm a police officer.
He's like the worst chief. Well, he'd be like a good chief in a city that had like real crime, but he's a bad small town chief.
Yeah, and like the mayor writes down the baby and just like, go and buy this baby.
Yeah. After, by the way, we open the episode with like a 5-minute Black Keys montage of like how this baby was made, the specific baby Jesus that got stolen. All very strange and self-indulgent.
No, it's wonderful. I was like, I think this is the first prolonged laughter I've had at the series. Was just the insanity of this town giving a shit this much about the baby Jesus.
I wrote down someone stole the baby Jesus from the town nativity to Kevin's total indifference, but the mayor's concern. So yeah, he correctly suspects Jill, who contemplates burning the thing while showing off to her friends. Luckily, the twin fuckboys return it to Kevin, and he presents it triumphantly to the townsfolk, who could not give less of a shit after everyone was harassing him to get it back. It's like, what is happening?
He does it at the party, which is like simultaneously like just a chance for the town to let off steam, and also a sting operation.
Yeah,
and then his speech is like, "Yeah, I found the baby Jesus," and everyone's just like,
awkward.
"What?"
No one cares. I love that he throws it out the window at the end as well. And Matt, by the way, in his 10-second appearance, has a spare baby for a nativity lying around. In his house, I guess, because they took the fucking church from him. So he just has this in his house.
Genuinely, everything about the baby Jesus plot, apart from Jill's role in it, is great.
Yeah.
Like, I just love the exasperation of Kevin and the proposed Viking funeral.
Yeah,
for the
Viking fucking funeral. She could not have made that shot. I'm sorry, that's a fucking Nerf gun. That's not happening. So to sort of jump back, and then we'll come back to this. Meg and Laurie show up at Kevin's house to present him with divorce papers, which, greatly angers him. Jill returns home and gives Laurie a Christmas present, the one present she put under the tree, which Laurie throws away as soon as she leaves. But at the end of the episode, she comes back desperately to try and retrieve it. So a lot happens here with, we learn that Tom is not Kevin's real son.
Yes,
or biological son. Sorry, that's disrespectful.
He has raised him most of his life, but it is another man's son.
Yes, and she says how you took on another man's mess. You were a great man, and you did this and you did that. We also get this bombshell. We get a few bombshells, but on the subject of Tom, Jill has been in contact with Tom vaguely recently, because you kind of get this impression that he's just sort of abandoned them all and he's just fucked off. But they talk, but not Kevin and Tom. So, and he actually disconnects the number. Well, I guess his phone got
smashed.
Yes. So yeah, but yeah. So that was interesting.
Jill hasn't spoken to Tom since after all the shit went down at the cult. But I don't think Jill's aware of his cultiness. But they are on better terms.
Yeah, and it also kind of explains, because the question I will keep coming back to is, why would these people abandon each other in a world where people have lost family members forever? And I guess the notion that Kevin isn't his biological father would somewhat explain his indifference towards, in any way interacting with him. But yeah, we do learn that, and we see the picture in his room of it's Laurie and his biological father, and it's been folded in half to hide the biological father, but he still has that picture. It's very, very.
Yeah, I think the actor is actually played by someone famous. Let me look it up. Not famous, but I think they've cast the person who plays Nora's husband in the show via a photo, even though he's not shown up yet. Yeah, Scott William Winters is the brother of Dean Winters. Is in the photo playing Tommy's biological father. And they also have Sebastian Arcellus as Nora Durst's husband in photos, but neither of whom have appeared on the show yet. Whether or not any of them will appear in the actual show, I cannot say, but they have been cast for photos.
Interesting. This whole scene is played tremendously well by Justin Theroux. I think him telling Meg to shut up and demanding Laurie be the one to say it, and I actually preempted him. I was like, "You say it," and then he's like, "No, I want to hear you say it. I'll do it for you if you say it." We'll never know if she would have or not. It kind of looked for a second like she was contemplating it.
I know. I think everyone in this scene does such a good job. Even when
Liv Tyler.
Well, I was going to say Margaret Qualley, when she comes in, she nails that kind of put upon, mum is in the house and dad is just shouting at her, and you don't know at what point in the conversation she came in.
Yeah, and he asks her that the next day.
Whether or not, and even then she kind of evades the question. It's did you just see me shouting at your mother, or did you see what was happening beforehand? Did you see what the letter was saying, what she wanted me to do.
And even just the weirdness of your mum is in the house again after being absent for however long. 6 months. Like, he says, you haven't spoken to me in 6 months, and now you want to do this.
Yeah, and then, but Amy Ranneman is superb. Like, she does so much with just her face. And
I guess, so the implication there is she only joined the GR 6 months ago.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because kind of the way a lot of it is played, you get the sense that the GR just sort of started up immediately after the event, and it isn't a recent thing. And it may have been started up, but you get the implication she's been there a while, maybe. But yeah, interesting that they would sort of stick it out until then.
Yeah, I think the show does a very interesting kind of. They make it seem obvious that the GR is kind of like a snowball.
Yeah.
And it's very much kind of picking up speed. Like, they have enough money to buy a church up front in cash. Yeah. Like, Meg has joined them. They have people in there in their safe house. I think in the second episode they talked about how each time they go there's different people in there.
Yes.
And they've never seen them before. And so obviously there's something going on that, like,
it seems like a training house or something. I don't know, but
yeah, but there's something appealing about what these people do, even if we don't know what it is yet exactly.
Well, Meg joined them after initially, like, telling them to fuck off, so there must be something going on there. We also see, much like how Matt, somewhat of a hypocrite, Laurie, kind of a hypocrite, because she performs these sort of rituals of the GR in giving away. I guess they don't believe in any kind of material possessions, because she was making Meg give away her mother's possessions, and I thought it was just the Departed type thing. But this is a gift from her daughter that says "Don't forget me," and she just puts it in a. Do they call these storm drains in America?
Yes.
Yes. She just puts it in there. It's cold as fuck. And I was like, oh, fuck you, Laurie. But then she goes back, and if you couple that with her standing in Kevin's yard at night time to just sort of look at the house and be near her family or whatever, you do get this sense there is definitely some conflict within Laurie, that she's maybe not 100% in on the GR, but she feels she must be there. I don't know, but I'm very much hoping we do get the big scene where she marches off and decides to join them, because I'm very desperate to know what would make a person do this, especially if they have their whole family still, in theory. Anyway, so Kevin, as we mentioned this dance, Kevin had been planning this kind of sting operation where he was going to provoke the GR into turning up at this dance and then arrest them for trespassing on private property, I guess, or school property.
Yeah, like, I think government property, I think.
Sure. Before he can go out and do that, he has a meet cute with Nora. It's lovely. We learn from their conversation that he cheated on Laurie. I mentioned how in that, when he's asked what he was doing on the day it happened, you see that, like, smash cut of him having sex, and, you know, the concept, well, that isn't necessarily Laurie. I guess you can put these two things together and say, what on the day it happened, that's what he was doing. And I guess this kind of gives you a hint at why this family has splintered apart, even though they haven't lost anyone, and why Jill is kind of a bitch to her father. I mean, she's kind of bitchy to everyone, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of coldness between those two, even though you would think that as they're the only two that are still there, that they would have some kind of closeness, but she's very standoffish towards him. I don't know that she knows, but I'm throwing her the lifeline of a reason to be kind of an unpleasant human being.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where this family is so messed up, and it's part of the illustration of the show, which is that this family that had nothing bad happen to them, quote unquote, is the most fucked up out of anyone.
They were fucked up before it, they were fucked up after it. The rapture had no effect on, like, them. It affected the world around them, and they've just been fucked up in this world around them.
Yeah, like, even though we know, like, Nora hasn't had the best time, she seems fine.
Yeah, suspiciously so, in fact. But yes, they have a very charming little her sitting on the floor, and these crazy kids in this post-apocalyptic world, why can't they just figure it out? Anyway, his GR sting doesn't quite go to plan, because one, they very smartly stand just short of the line they would have to cross to be trespassing, but he arrests them all anyway. Corrupt police still exist in a post-apocalyptic world. He quickly realises that the bulk of their numbers are missing, and we see that they have spent the evening breaking into people's houses and stealing family photos. My first instinct was they were stealing Christmas presents, and I'm honestly not sure which of those two things is worse.
They weren't stealing family photos, though. They were stealing family photos of people who were departed.
Sure, okay, family photos of people who were departed, yes.
Which is even more fucked up, that all these people are going to come home after this dance, and every trace of...
That's what they want to do. They want to erase the people that are gone.
Well, they want to make sure you don't forget. And, I mean, obviously, like...
What, you don't forget, so we're taking away your ability to remember.
No, but I think it's more of like this thing happened, this thing is supposed to hurt.
They didn't die, a bigger thing happened.
Yeah, it's like that idea. Like, yes, you can argue that, like, taking away their ability to see them is taking away their ability to remember. But it's just one of those things where it's just like, it ties in with their don't waste your breath. Like, why have you still got these photos up? This happened, don't forget about it, but also don't honour these people.
That's a dick thing to do, though.
It is. Like, the G are genuinely awful.
Yeah. What's their leader's name? Is it Patty, the leader?
Patty.
Yeah.
Yes, Patty.
She earlier on says something to the effect of there is no family. I guess you link that together and... Yeah. Anyway, this episode, I'm back to being somewhat frustrated by this show. There are things I'm very much intrigued by. There are things they do that I like, but just a lot of people are making poor decisions and acting in a way that doesn't, to me, seem massively authentic. Not like the acting ability of the actors. I mean, like the decisions the characters make.
I think it's interesting that you decided to skip almost entirely over Jill's plotline.
Why? What does she do?
I know she doesn't do much, but like I think we're both kind of sick of. It's another teenage party where they do dumb teenager things.
I hate Jill, Ben. She's my least favourite regular character. I've prepared for you. I'm going to rank how much I like the characters on an episode. Okay.
Are we doing every regular
the
character?
People you told me that are regular, so I've got 10. Okay. Do you want to go best to most likeable to least, or the other way?
No, we'll go least to best.
Okay. Jill is the worst kind of TV teenager. She's just relentlessly sullen and moody and argumentative and contrary and she's just a bitch to everyone, and it's like, I get it. This is all very, like, fuel for your teen angst. Like, oh, look what happened to the world. But there's a line, and she fucking crosses it and gives a middle finger to everyone about it.
See, I'm going to disagree that she's the worst kind of TV teenager, because there are TV teenagers that actively get in the way of the plot, whereas I do feel like there isn't a plot for her to get in the way of so much so far, and I think that kind of saves her from being as bad as like the teenagers from Homeland, or like I'm not going to say she's as good as anyone on Friday Night Lights or anything like that.
How dare you?
Like she's not like
you don't get to talk about Tim Riggins, Ben.
She's not Hall of Fame TV teen actress, but she definitely isn't. Like, there are TV teens that I think of and actively think make the show worse.
Yeah, like you've done a thing that has made everyone's situation worse. Fine, that is the worst kind. But she also kind of feels a bit pointless at the moment as well. And
I can see that, and I do think when the show starts to flesh out the family stuff more, like the show does make a pivot away from teen angst.
Okay, good.
Eventually, but like I do think when the show becomes it pivots, when it pivots away, like it becomes stronger and Jill gets better stuff to do. But at the moment, it's basically just like, oh look, Jill's at another nihilistic teen party where they're doing drugs and.
Okay, well, in at number 9, her brother Tom. Why are you doing anything you're doing? Why are you hanging out with this stupid woman who is pregnant with the baby of a paedophile cult leader? Why are you following the orders of this paedophile cult leader? Why don't you just go home, you dumb fuck?
Yeah, this is the interesting one because this is a good chance to talk about what happened during this episode. So this episode had 2 directors, Leslie Linklater and Carl Franklin. The show shut down production after they finished filming episode 6 to kind of like retool themselves. And a big part of that was, I think they were in the edit room on episode 4 and they were just like, the Tom and Christine story was not working at all. They'd cast an actor to play the very briefly appearance of the soldier that they meet on the bus.
Yeah.
Who, I forget the name of the actor, but he is a big part in the book where like they spend a chapter discussing their dress up as the barefoot people, and basically they make a fast meal attempt of talking why they are barefoot people, because this guy's really intrigued by the idea of like joining a cult and stuff like that. And so eventually they talk him into joining the barefoot people. Despite the fact not being barefoot people.
Yeah.
And I think the episode was going to be like 50% of it was going to be kind of that, and they realised that it kind of became a guest star episode. a time where you're 4 episodes into a show and all of a sudden, like, you're spending time with someone who's only going to be in 1 episode. They were like, no, we're going to retool this. So I think pretty much everything with Tom and Christine in the hospital is shot afterwards, where Leslie Linklater wasn't available and Carl Franklin came on instead. Which I can see it being better, and I do think the scene where they're on the bus is like the worst thing about their little plot line. It's
just
so
surviving.
The soldier just shows up and it's just like, why is this guy talking? Like, why has he got like 5 or 6 lines? And it's very weird and very like, it works, but only because there's no need for the context. But it does kind of stick out that this guy appears and he's only ever in this one scene. But so the show was going through teething problems at this point, and they are actively making decisions to try and fix them. Whether or not you think they are working is a different matter. But this is not a season which is 100% smooth all the way through.
No. So in at number 8, his companion Christine, like, obvious reasons, but the only reason I would nudge her above Tom is Tom seems like a rational person who could and should get out and chooses not to, whereas it kind of seems like she's like just so into this that like this is just what she is. So on some level that excuses her to me, but also making
I am stunned we don't have Dog Murderer in the bottom 3 characters of the show.
Well, that's the fucking thing about this show, man. Number 7, Meg, literally, why did you join the GR? Why don't you know how to cut down trees? Like, come on.
I'm going to defend Meg because I love her reading the letter, because she is so persistent at reading the letter.
She is persistent.
Like,
or
he's given her this one thing to do.
Says, shut the fuck up, and she keeps going.
I know, she just keeps on going. I'm just like, yeah, go Meg. Like, you've been given this one job and you are not going to back down from...
You couldn't cut down the tree, but you can read that letter, Meg. Laurie, number 6, she's a hypocrite and she's in the GR, who are the worst. Somehow she is above her children and Meg and Christine. Number 5, Matt, he's kind of a bit of a prick. We went over all this, but of the people who I think are bad people, he's probably the best one. Number 4, the mayor, not likeable, but not actively horrible, and that's enough to get you in the top 5 on this show full of horrible people. Number 3, Kevin, despite rampant dog murder and keeping things from his daughter for no real reason, one of the few people who isn't just actively an asshole all the time, and kind of sort of does things that you're like, yeah, do that. You kind of feel he's the direct enemy of our villains, so you kind of root for him. But he did murder those dogs, and he's still in the top 3, so says a lot about everyone else. Number 2, Amy, who does nothing, but she crushes on Kevin, which is potentially the only relatable thing that any of these characters have said or done. Which I think deserves a nod. And number 1, Nora, because, I mean, worst case scenario, she's tricking people, and she's definitely fucking with people for kicks, but she's still somehow the absolute nicest person on this show, and Carrie Coon's great. So Nora reigns at number 1. I have a strong suspicion she will forever be at number 1, because all these people are pieces of shit. But hey,
so you haven't ranked Patty.
Oh, she's a regular. Okay, well, she's the leader of the GR, and I hate the GR, and I want to hurt all of the GR. So she can... I guess she's below Jill. I guess she'd be number 11. And I guess I didn't rank the fuckboy twins, who are just nothing. But that would be good enough to get you above a lot of these people, so...
Okay. And then finally, Dog Murderer Supreme, Dean.
Oh, sure. I hate the GR... But he does murder dogs. I think I hate the GR more. I would put him above Patty, but below Jill. Yes, the guy who's like, no, dude, we'll go murder these dogs. It'll be a fun time. I like him slightly more than the leader of the GR. There you go. There's my ranking for this week. It will be updated every episode.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah.
Right.
Good segment. It's kind of spinning off of Kevin and Ben's Asshole Idiot of the Week on Lost, because that's a good segment. Someone is always being an asshole or an idiot.
So we are now 4 episodes into the show.
Yeah.
We've had one great episode.
Yeah.
3 patchy episodes.
I was going to say, out of 4 episodes, I like maybe 1.5 of them, or maybe 2 if you combine the other 3.
See, because I think my thing is, even though I do think episodes like 1, 2, and 4 are patchy, the tone is something that I appreciated. Yeah. The acting is still good.
Yep.
Like, it had enough of a draw that I was willing to give it the rest. And, I mean, if the show hadn't had episode 3, who knows if I'd have carried on watching. Probably would have, because Damon Lindelof is my boy. I mean, this is not a show that is immediate as Lost. I mean, by this time in Lost, Walkabout had aired.
Yeah.
And, like, no matter what you say about Lost, like, you've got the pilot and Walkabout within the first 4 episodes, you are set for life.
I mean, the first 10 minutes of Lost are intense as shit.
Yeah, but like, so how are you feeling? Again, like last time you said that you didn't know how much more time you'd give the show.
Yeah.
Based on those first two, how are you feeling now?
I think, like you, that the Matt episode would probably have bought it some more time for me. In a world where I'm not committed to watching all of these to fulfill this podcast, there are just some things that continue to really frustrate me, and that are creative choices, in my opinion, not just like things that I just don't jive with, but like.
So what is frustrating you? Is it just the idea that the characters aren't acting realistically to you?
Kind of, like, I just continue to struggle with the premise that in a world where so many people have just vanished, that you wouldn't desperately cling to your loved ones harder, and instead there's so many people who are just like, yeah, fuck my family, off I go.
I think that
no matter what they do.
I think that speaks a lot to the idea that, like, 'cause, I mean, Damon Lindelof has come out publicly and said he was very depressed whilst writing this.
Yeah.
That is, if we're saying that the whole world has kind of come down with like an existential depression, like not anything as intense as like actual clinical depression, but it makes you do irrational things when you feel that way. Like you say things to yourself that aren't true, even though you have a support system and people who are around you who want to care for you. You sometimes just don't see it, and I think that's something the show nails very well, is that this is a show in which the whole world has depression, and it's about the ways in which people deal with that, and some of those ways are healthy, and some of those ways are categorically not. And I do think the show gets better at illustrating that metaphor as it goes on, and at the moment it's just kind of like people are doing things, and
there's just rampant apathy. Well, that's my next thing. Like, sure, if just a whole bunch of people died like that all at once, that would be incredibly bleak, and I get that it would depress people. But there's also the notion that, like, say this is the legit rapture, like, these people went to heaven, you leftovers, you were sinners, you weren't worthy, whatever. I just don't buy that this many people would believe that they would think it was the legit ski rapture. Like, every character we've come across almost doesn't believe that's what happened, or doesn't give a shit. Like, Kevin doesn't give a shit what happened. Like, he's just living his life.
Kevin is the one who, at this point, feels like the only thing that's affected for him is the fact that his wife has left.
Yeah.
Like he's got a dysfunctional family, but the most pressing thing that he has to deal with is the GR in his day job, and the fact that his wife is part of the GR.
I guess just because the show has deliberately gone out of its way to not talk about what actually happened, it makes me think... I don't know, it makes me think that it doesn't matter, and then it leaves me thinking that, like, why is everyone so, like, fucking moody and angsty about this? If they don't give a shit what happened, why are they so aggressively depressed and apathetic about everything?
I think the argument is about the idea that what happened does matter.
Yeah.
But... like, if you set the show in the 2 months afterwards, then that's the kind of show which is all about the government task force who's been hired to investigate it, and this is not that show. And
sure, it's the healing process afterwards, I get that. It's just, it kind of seems that it's, I don't know, just some of the motivations of these characters so far aren't driving for me, but I'm sure it will.
I think that's fair. I think it is a show which season 1 is kind of in this cloud of depression, and once the show realizes that this is a concept that they can go big and have fun with, that's when it starts to click.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, it's kind of like, oh, this is just a show about bad people being bad.
Yeah. That's my other thing, that just everyone in the show is a bad person doing bad things, and like I don't know how much that can take, but I'm sure it will go places. And like, I'm not against the concept of like having a really high concept thing that happens and then moving forward away from it, and it's all about the consequence. It's not about fixing it or solving it or uncovering it. It's about that happened. That is why that's like the backdrop to this world. Now here are the lives of some characters, because I started writing a book at some point with a very similar idea. Well, there's a big thing and then we jump forward like 2 years or whatever, and we're not dealing with the like how it all happened. We're dealing with this is what the world's like now. So I'm fine with that. It's just I don't know. This isn't
the angle you'd go for if you were doing this kind of story.
No. And like I do respect that they're not trying to be Like, for a lot of people, the reason Lost ended up not being satisfying is they sold a lot of the hook of the show, and I'm sure this is more ABC than them, or maybe I don't know, but they sold that show to a lot of people based on the numbers, the polar bears, the weird shit, like the mystery of it, what's happening, what's in the hatch, what happens when this happens. And along the way, you have some just excellently written character development and pathos and just generally good television. But then when it all came down to it, all of the mystery stuff didn't live up for people. And, like, I feel a lot of people are like, but it was never about that. It was about these people. And it's like, that's fine if you...
But it was about that for some people.
Exactly. And I respect that they're not doing that here. Like, they're not cock-teasing you with what really happened that day.
Yeah,
because if I never find that out, and they'd always been talking about it, I'd be pissed. But if they are making it clear from the out that, like... to the point that they originally had a scene where their main character was masturbating when they were talking about it, just to make it clear that doesn't matter, is fine. But I consequently need a little bit more from the what everyone's doing, I guess.
So obviously they're not intent on, there's not the scientist character researching what's happening.
Yeah, no.
But the supernatural stuff that's kind of happening around it,
that's intriguing. It's just I don't want to get my hopes up that it will be that kind of a show, because I don't know. Yeah, like, because that is the stuff that was interesting. It's like, oh, Kevin's dad hears voices, and like and he's having these dreams, and weird things are happening. But I don't want to get my hopes up that it's going to turn into a big let's find out all the mysteries show, because Damon Lindelof has hurt me that way before.
He has.
He has.
But yeah, I think you're in a very similar place to where I was, but I get to like lord this over you, where I get to listen to the things that you say, and I'm just like, oh.
I'm glad that you did feel that, like, knowing what a huge fan of this you are, and that you're not disputing, you aren't trying to be like, no, Matt, you're just wrong, this is great. That's good to know, because it tells me it does make a change, and it will go places, because it could just be a depressing thing of, we're watching the same thing, and you're coming away from it going, this is the best show I've ever seen. I'm going, this sucks. And knowing that that is fine.
It's important to say that by the end of the season, I did have this at number 2 on my end of the year list. Okay. So
they got 6 episodes
they've got 6 episodes to turn it around. But again, I think a lot of it was I kind of got to the end of it and I was like, there were probably other shows which were more consistent, doing different things better.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I kind of got to the end of this season and I was like, the episodes that hit me so hard. Yeah. The first time I saw 2 boats and a helicopter, I genuinely couldn't breathe at the end of that episode.
Wow.
Just for like how stressed I felt out about that.
Okay.
And maybe that's saying more about like kind of where I was in my headspace in July 2014. But this is a show that even at its patchiest and its most frustrating was speaking to me on some level. I'm one of those people who isn't religious, but I appreciate when people talk about spirituality in like interesting ways. And I think Damon Lindelof is someone who I think talks about spirituality in a very interesting way.
I think he's very respectful about it. Like, he's not trying to be like, these Hollywood Jews who fucking shit on like red, white, and blue America and Christianity. They all hate Jesus. Like, it's none of that shit. Like, he seems to tackle it in a very adult manner.
Yeah, right. That's enough about these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So next up, we've got Gladys, which I'm going to say now, content warning.
Oh, is there going to be more dog murder, Ben?
No.
Okay.
But just gird yourself.
Okay. Gross? Offensive? What?
I'm not going to say any more than that.
Okay.
I'm just going to say gird yourself, and then after that we get Guest, which is probably going to be your favourite episode of the season.
Interesting. Okay, well, I look forward to both of those. Alright, well, join us next time on Countdown to Destruction, where we will continue to find out what is happening in this world. EnterTheRealWorld.com and check out all of our good stuff. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Matt, for putting up with me whilst we watch one of my favourite shows.
You're very welcome. I really don't want this to be a Man of Steel situation where, like, possibly the most depressing thing that's happened in my life. I sat through Man of Steel, and the guy I was watching it with, there was no, like, whispering to each other to, like, share opinions. The second it finished and we turned to each other, I was like, well, that fucking sucked. And I was like, I really liked it. It's one of the most depressing, like, we're not going to be friends for much longer moments.
I hated Man of Steel, so we're fine.
Good. Bye, everybody.
Take me to church, I worship like a dog in the side.